I had never heard of change management after I graduated school, so no, I didn't set out to go into the field. I didn't even know it existed, and so what I like to say is that change management actually found me, right? The position usually looks broad across what's happening and starts from a strategic point of view, like what are we trying to achieve, where are we going, and why does it even matter? And being able to translate that vision into, well, what does this mean from a change impact perspective? So what's really going to be different? If it's from a people standpoint, what do we need people to do differently? If it's from a technology standpoint, what tools do we need to implement for people to be able to do their jobs better? From a organization standpoint, how do we help people work differently? So you see where you're headed, but you need to know what's the path to get there. And so a lot of change managers will work with the team of people who are driving the change to chart the course. So if that's where we're going and what's changing, then who's involved? Who are the people that are going to drive the change? Who are the people on the receiving end of the change? And how do we best engage them? And so how you move people to a new place from where they are today to where you want them to be, it's by leveraging multiple different engagement channels. My first question is, well, what's the desired results that you're looking for? Because you're not going to change unless something's not working or you see an opportunity for something to be even better than it is. Otherwise, as human beings, we're not really clamoring for change. We like stability. We like to know what's coming around the corner. And so my first question is, well, what do you want to be different? What are your desired results? And then how does that compare to where you are today? So I guess I start by asking, what's the finish line look like? It's usually around this idea of helping people lower the human resistance to change. As if we look back at how we evolved as a species and how we survived, it was to resist change. There's a lot of listening and asking probing questions, getting people to get really clear. So it would be attending meetings and gathering information and insights, whether it's about, I mentioned the vision setting, but also what does this really mean from a day-to-day standpoint? It could be everything from you need to change the team that you're on or the role that you're in, down to you need to learn new keystrokes. So it would go from the broad all the way down to the details of what needs to be different, and then how do we get people to learn that. So some days I would be creating documents that would list all of the changes. It's called a change impact assessment. What are all the changes that are coming down to a pretty minute level? And then taking those and saying, well, how am I going to teach people? Is it in a training class? And then sometimes I would be developing PowerPoint slides for a training class. It could be that I need to help them understand the big picture, so I'd be writing a communication that would then be sent from an executive. There are other days where I'd be saying, well, I'm not even sure who is impacted, so I'd be working on a spreadsheet called a stakeholder analysis to get clear on the individuals who are involved and better understanding of, are they open to the change? Are they resistant or reticent? There's everything from the bigger picture conversations and the vision setting all the way down to the analytics behind the people involved and the changes that are coming, and then the development of materials, whether it's a message or a training. I was usually tied to a large-scale initiative, change initiative, and I've done technology implementations, culture changes, leadership changes, but I'll take the technology implementation for one of them. It was a really large-scale, $54 million implementation that was global, meaning we had people who would be impacted by the change in pretty much every region, but primarily North America, Europe, and Asia. So we needed to work with a large project team who was driving the changes, about a 100-person project team, to then mobilize the organization of more than 400 to 500 people who were going to have to do their jobs differently as a result of this change. So for me, it's just really gratifying to recognize that I could have had a role in helping somebody in their day-to-day job feel more empowered or more excited or more engaged. It's integral. It's almost, you've heard the analogy, culture eats strategy for breakfast. The idea is that you can have the best laid plans, but at the end of the day, we're human beings, and we're going to respond to it in whatever way keeps us safe, even if we don't realize that we're doing that. And so if the culture is one where you hide the problems, it's going to thwart your efforts to understand what's really going on. If the culture is one where people are really interested in learning and growing and it's okay to make mistakes, it could really amplify what you're trying to change. So for me, the culture is paramount, because it's either going to derail you or fast track you. Many companies don't have the budgets to put a full-time person on it. And so I would say if you want to more DIY it, do it yourself, start with that compelling vision. Just get really clear on where you're going and why, and get people engaged from an emotional standpoint, and do that engagement in a real authentic and compelling way. Be who you are, set that vision, and be authentic in the communication of that vision, even if it's to say it's not going to be perfect along the way, but we know why we're going where we're headed, and it is going to make us a better company and a better place. The visionary message makes sense to come from a CEO or executives who are higher up, because they can give the big picture and help people understand the path. When it comes to how individuals are impacted, they like to hear that message from a manager. Throughout any of those communications, the best thing to do is to be open with what you know and what you're still figuring out. And when you're saying things like, hey, we know this and we don't yet know that, but here's when we think we'll know more, so that people aren't left hanging or don't think that people aren't addressing the open questions. So transparency for me is not about sharing every last detail, because it's not always useful or helpful to everybody, but it is about saying, here's what we know, here's what we don't know and are working, and here's who's working on it, and when we'll have more information for you. I think people feel like they have to have all the answers, and especially during times of change, especially this rate and pace that we have nowadays, nobody has all the answers. And if you think you do, or you're trying to give the impression that you do, people are going to lose confidence in what you do really know. And so the more that you can be authentic about what you do know and don't know, the more they're really going to trust in what you're telling them. So ambiguity comes up a lot during change, and some people are great at it. It's kind of maybe a difference in personality traits. They don't mind dealing with the ambiguity, and then there's others that ambiguity brings with it a lot of concerns, and it could be because part of their job is to map the course, and the course is not clear. And so what I tend to help people do is to separate what do they know and what do they not know, what do they wish they knew. And based on that information, how can they go get some more answers that they need to have? And of the answers they can't get, how do they get more comfortable with it? So, in other words, what about not having an answer to a question is concerning to them? Are they thinking worst case scenario, and can they think more realistic? Do they think they're supposed to have an answer to something that someone's going to ask them and they're afraid to say, I don't know? So it's really about dissecting what is this discomfort with ambiguity, because usually it's not the ambiguity itself. Well, everyone is looking at how the future of work, which is really far more present than it is far away, how is that impacting every arena? And for change, we need to change the way that we change. Gone are the days where we could look at where we want to be and compare it to today and just create a path and arrive, because that destination is constantly changing. And so more for us, what we need to do is set a general direction and then be able to move in that direction and check in along the way. Are we still going where we thought we wanted to go? What new information do we have that we didn't know when we started that we can incorporate into our plans? And is this actually turning into the results that we thought we wanted to get? And keep recognizing that more information is going to show up that you didn't have, and let that information inform your direction. And so we're in Boston, if we know we want to go towards the West Coast, but we don't know if it's Washington or San Diego, let's at least target the general direction and then chart our path as we go. And for some people, that's uncomfortable. Like, they want to know from start to finish exactly what route they'll take. And I don't know that we have that luxury anymore, given the rate and pace of change. And so it is about saying, well, we know generally where we want to head, and then we'll keep checking, are we still going west, or have we veered north, and how do we correct along the way?